Hello, pup parents, and welcome to today's episode of the Perfect Pup Podcast. My name is Devin. Sometimes we unknowingly and unintentionally reinforce our dog's bad behaviors with our attention. So, we're going to talk about why that is, how you can be more aware of it, and of course, some things you can do to hopefully avoid that and prevent it in the future. So, let's get right into it. When we talk about attention as a reinforcer, we need to cover a couple things first. A reinforcer is anything that is added to your dog's environment that makes the occurring behavior more likely to be repeated or maintained. So, generally speaking, when we think of a reinforcer, we think of treats, right? But before we kind of dive into those lists of reinforcers, let's talk about why dogs care about our attention because it's important to understand and look at kind of where we've come from and where dogs have come from and the relationship that we have with them. Tens of thousands of years ago, we started to domesticate dogs. And part of that domestication certainly was teaching them and showing them, hey, we are friendly to you and we are going to provide you with things like food and attention and shelter and even protection from certain things. And so dogs as a species quickly started to understand, hey, these human people around me, they are good to be around in most cases. And I want to be paying attention to them. And I should probably be alert as to what they're doing because oftentimes when they approach me, when they come to me, there's food involved, protection, things that are ensuring my survival. Fast forward to the present day, and none of our dogs are close to what they were back in those ancient times when we were starting to domesticate them. Well, not none, but most of our dogs are very far from that. But it remains today that our attention is a reinforcer for them because, again, our dogs are dependent upon us. If you put yourself in their shoes for a moment, they are incapable of finding their own food. They're incapable of, letting themselves out the door to go to the bathroom, right? Like they're trapped in this environment in a sense, and they are relying on us for so much. And so our attention, just us looking at them, talking to them, engaging with them, is so reinforcing for them in most cases because they know that when we are giving them attention, other good things are going to happen on top of it. So they are keenly aware of our attention and when it's being given out. Going back to reinforcers, like we talked about, treats and food, of course, that's a reinforcer, but there are other ones that are kind of sometimes we think about less. For example, it could be throwing a ball. My dog Scout loves fetch. It could be a belly rub. It could be just talking and praising your dog and giving them a head scratch. It could be playing tug. It could be, there's a whole host of reinforcers. What's important to remember is that your dog decides what's reinforcing for them. There are things, of course, that we can do to increase the likelihood that our dog will like a certain reinforcer. But generally speaking, your dog has things that they care more about. You hear things like, oh, my dog is so ball driven, or oh, they're so food driven, right? Like they have their personality, they have their little quirks, and they choose what is reinforcing for them. For most dogs, attention is a reinforcer. There are some dogs that they just don't really care as much, but I would say that that is the minority and not the general consensus for our dogs. So let's talk about unintentional attention reinforcement, right? Kind of a mouthful there, but think about this example for a second. You are sitting at your table and you're eating some dinner, and your dog comes up and they just sit there at first and they're just staring at you, right? They're hoping for some table scraps. And you don't pay attention to them, you ignore them. And then your dog lets out just a little low whine or something like that. And you say, oh, sweetie, no scraps today. Like, but you're so cute. Something like that, right? You probably turned, you looked at them, you said that, you used your high pitch dog mom or dog dad voice. And that little bit of attention can become a slight reinforcer because your dog's starting to think, hey, this person turned to me, they gave me some type of reinforcement. Maybe I'm going to continue to do this because it sounded like there were good things that might happen. And then they bark at you for some table scraps and you try to ignore it. And then they put their paw up on you, and you, oh, get down, pup, and you push them down. All of that right there, there was reinforcement with your attention. Your dog is understanding, and your dog is being taught by you that when they do those things, like coming and sitting near the table, putting their paw up on you, there is a there is at least the reinforcement of your attention, and our dogs want our attention. Of course, they're searching for the food, but there's small pieces of reinforcement along the way. Sometimes it's just important to be aware of these things, to be aware that, hey, when you give your dog attention in any way, shape, or form, it can be a reinforcer. So you might be thinking, okay, so what am I supposed to do if my dog isn't doing something that I want? I can't, should I just close my eyes? Should I run away and not look at them or not say a word? All jokes aside, it is important sometimes to just turn your back and stop giving attention, or make sure you don't talk to them. Or when your dog jumps up on you, even giving them some, touching them to push them off, that can be a reinforcer. That's attention. And so it's important to keep that in mind. But generally speaking, what can be helpful is to interrupt and redirect. So, what I mean by that is, for example, your dog begging at the table, as soon as they come over to you and sit next to you, you could interrupt that behavior and you could say, and you could lead them over to their place or to their bed or to their somewhere else. And when they go there, give them a jackpot, give them a great reinforcer, give them something big, a huge reward, something along the lines of a bully stick or a frozen Kong or a big piece of jerky or something that is just going to be a very, very strong reinforcer. Because what you're doing there is you're saying, you can tell them no, you can create that delineation of, I don't want you to do this behavior, redirect them to the behavior that you do want, and heavily reward. I know I'm breaking this down in an oversimplistic manner. Dog behavior is not extremely simple. It does have nuance in it, is complicated at times, but generally speaking, I want you to think about being aware of the attention that you are giving your dog. And just to make this point, I'm not saying ignore your dog all the time or don't give them attention or love. That is not at all what I'm saying. Like, I give my dogs tons of attention and love, and they run my house pretty much, right? But there are instances when they are doing behaviors that we don't want, that we need to be aware that when we give our attention through looking at them, speaking to them, even just touching them to push them off or something like that, that can be a reinforcer for them. And that reinforcer, like we talked about, is going to make that behavior that was happening directly beforehand more likely to be repeated in the future. And sometimes we don't want that. I hope you found this episode enjoyable. I hope you learned something. I hope it got you thinking. If it was helpful, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Share it with other pup parents that you know. But other than that, we'll catch you on the next episode.